Hi, I'm going to be reviewing a podcast that Rhonda Patrick did. She's an anti-aging expert.
I was wondering what it is about these subjects that is driving you and what you're trying to accomplish.
I've learned through my experience. So I have a PhD in biomedical science. I've done research on aging, on cancer, on metabolism, nutrition, neuroscience, a lot of different fields, very cross-disciplinary. And I've realized
That sounds pretty fancy. The only problem is that usually when you get educated, you don't think for yourself anymore. You don't listen to your intuition. You don't actually think, oh, if this feels bad, could it actually be bad for me? All that you think about is, this study says that it's good for me. If it feels bad, then I will still do it because of what the study says, because of what other people say is good for me.
over the decades of doing research that there are many different small changes that can be made that have a really big impact on our health, what's called our health span. So this is essentially being disease-free throughout our life, being healthy, feeling good, and I'm sort of obsessed with trying to optimize that and find a protocol to optimize it and then share that information with the world. And it's funny because, we live in a time now where we've got access to so much information, overwhelming amount of information. But the reality is that simple, important tools that people can do.
Yeah, but that's the whole problem. That's what I meant. Why do you need information from the outside, from other people to know what's good for you? Who can know what's good for you? Only you. Nobody else can know. I understand that people are manipulated today. That's the main reason why I make my videos, to try to deprogram people, so to speak. But still, at the end of the day, only you, through your intuition, will be able to know what's good for you.
In their life right now to drastically improve the way they age are still not known to the general population. And so my mission is to get that knowledge to people so that they can make these simple changes and live healthier and feel better.
And what will be the impact on their lives if they understand that information and start to implement that information on a real sort of specific practical sense?
Well, there are things that people are deficient in, for example, that they could simply take a supplement. Vitamin D is a good example. That could...
Vitamin D is not a vitamin. Officially, it's a hormone, but that's not even what I mean. I'm talking about the so-called supplement. It's rat poison. It's literally what's being used in rat poison. It's the same thing. That's why you can overdose on it. That's why it has an LD50 value. It's because it's toxic to the human body. Meaning that if you would take too many of those pills, you would die. That's it. That's really all that you need to know about it. It's fake. A lot of it comes from irradiated vegetable oils, and then some may come from sheep's wool, but there's absolutely no way to prove what it actually is that they get out of the sheep's wool. And besides that, it's toxic because of the procedure, the way it's extracted. I have a whole video about this I made about Paul Saladino and how creatine is created. I will link it in case you haven't seen it, if you want to find out more about how supplements are made. But vitamin D is extremely toxic. You can very easily overdose on it and die.
Affect their disease risk, their dementia risk. So you're talking about quality of life improvement.
By the way, just to be clear, I say vitamin D, but what I mean is the vitamin D supplement, which is not vitamin D. It's fake. It's a toxin. Just to be very clear.
Right now and also later. So it affects mood, it affects depression, and it affects your neurodegenerative disease risk like dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So there are low-hanging fruits, things that are simple that you can just basically fill these gaps. There are things that are also a little more effortful. And this is where exercise comes in, where you put in this effort and it just, if you could pill up what exercise does in a pill, it would be the biggest blockbuster miracle drug out there. It'd blow Ozempic out of the water. It'd be, just no comparison.
Exercise just means exertion. And for most people, it means chronic stress. So she's saying that chronic stress blows everything else out of proportion. And this is who people take anti-aging advice from. Bravo. I love it.
Person. So I think that, again, that it's these little things that you can do that is going to help with depression, help with mood right now.
And by the way, this is exactly what I mean. She listens to what other people tell her instead of listening to her body. You know that you hate exercise, you know that you suffer, you can feel how it ages you, you can feel the wrinkles forming, and you can actually see them. The more you exercise month by month, the more wrinkles you will see because your body is aging so badly because of the chronic and extreme stress from exercise. But as long as some study, article, or whoever says something else, you keep going. You keep going against your intuition. That's what she's promoting in the first place. Counterintuitive living.
You feel better right now, give you more energy, help you be more focused, help you be more motivated, but also affect your long-term disease risks so that, when you're older in life, you're not demented, and that affects you, it affects your family. So I think it's just it's so important because there are easy things that can be done that people just don't know about.
Is there a psychological element to this where we kind of see...
I don't see any people in Okinawa who never exercised in their whole life have any symptoms of dementia, even when they are over 100 years old. That's one example out of many.
So we don't fight it, because we only seem to interfere with and fight and are motivated by things in life there where we feel like we've got an element of control. And we see everybody get old, and we see everybody start to, lean over a little bit and struggle to walk and get a little bit more frail.
Yeah, that's typically because of exercise. Yeah. Nobody ever used to have these kind of problems. And of course, also because of horrible diets. You can argue about which one does more damage. If you do proper bodybuilding, it will be the exercise. If you only run now and then, it's probably because you eat a grain-based diet with vegetables.
So I think because we've observed that so much over the last couple of decades, I'm just over 30 years old, I assume that'll happen to me. So I've seen my dad, get older, get a little bit more large, lose his lean muscle. So I think, well, I'm like my...
Yeah, because of diet. How else do you become large, as he says? Only by eating food. You can't gain weight by not eating food. It has to be food. So his diet is bad. So what are you going to blame now? That he doesn't exercise enough?
My dad, I've got some of the same genetics. That's inevitable for me.
So genetics does play a role in the way you age, but it's a small role. In fact, 70% or more of the way you're aging is actually due to your life.
Genetics cannot play a role in the way you age. There's no way to prove that anyway. It's a purely religious belief. Just purely logically, how could you inherit the way you age? How could you inherit the wrinkles, spots on your skin, or anything like that? Everybody ages individually. You're not going to inherit the way you age from your parents, grandparents, or any ancestors. Of course not. Aging has to do in the first place with how much stress your body is exposed to. And seeing as exercise is extreme stress, of course you're going to age very badly if you exercise.
Let's just imagine two 70-ish-year-old men, okay, John and Rob. And John, he's razor sharp. He can carry groceries to his car. He doesn't get out of breath. He's feeling healthy. He's able to...
She talks about it as if it's some kind of achievement, being able to carry the groceries to your car. Everybody should be able to do that at any age, except if you're too young, if you're a toddler. But later on, you should be able to do that for the rest of your life. If you would be eating natural food, which is raw meat, that's what humans eat in nature for the most part. They hunt down animals and eat them raw as they naturally are. Of course, you won't find good quality meat in a grocery store usually, which is why if you shop at a grocery store for all of the food that you eat, then you're probably not gonna live that long and be that healthy. Then you may have trouble.
He can walk efficiently, right? And then there's...
Yeah, as if walking efficiently is some kind of miracle. That's so strange that we see that as an achievement today, as if it shouldn't be common.
Rob. And Rob is forgetting his words. He's not cognitively sharp. He's out of breath just from walking to his car.
Yeah, that's literally you being malnourished, not eating what you're naturally supposed to. That's why the body breaks down with age. It has nothing actually to do with aging. Your body is deteriorating, and because you keep eating the same garbage food, it gets worse and worse. This has nothing to do with aging naturally as such, because we don't see this with any animals that get older, not even with humans that live naturally. There's no elderly people in tribes that have any of these problems. They even hunt still when they are 90, 100 years old.
He has a really hard time carrying groceries. Genetics only plays a small role in those two different outcomes for those two men. The biggest, I would say, thing that's dictating the way these two men age is their lifestyle, with a huge part of that actually being exercise. Mm-hmm. And
it's such nonsense. She's right that it's not genetics. Obviously, you cannot inherit any of that. You cannot inherit how you're going to deteriorate. That would make zero sense.
I know we've all heard it from our mother or grandmother, great-grandmother, exercise is good for you. If you eat healthy and you exercise, you're going to...
Wait, what? What? Grandmother? No. Great-grandmother? Delusional. Mother, maybe, if your mother was born in the 90s, but even in the 90s, nobody used to exercise. It kind of started then slowly. You could see it on TV. But your grandma, if she was born, let's say, in the 60s, nobody exercised in the 60s. Well, literally nobody. There were like 2 gyms on this earth. And some people who started using drugs back then went to those gyms. I'm overreacting, obviously, but there were very few. Nothing compared to what we have today. And nobody was outside jogging, let alone running marathons. That was basically unheard of. And your great-grandmother? What? Let's say that she was born 100 years ago. You think that somebody exercised back then? And she would have said to you, yes, my child, exercising is good. She didn't even know what exercise is. She's delusional, or she's lying. I think that she's misinformed.
You're going to be healthier. And that's like a general statement. But the reality...
No, your grandma and your great-grandma for sure would have said, have children and eat a lot of meat and eat liver. Your great-grandmother would have said, eat raw liver. Your grandma would have said, eat cooked liver. And your mother would have said, liver is disgusting. That's what happened in the last 100 years.
The reality is, it is so true that exercise affects everything, down to the molecular level in terms of like...
You cannot study anything that's molecular because you cannot observe it. How can you say that it goes to the molecular level if it's something that we cannot even see or study in any way? She's just talking about her religious beliefs, which is fine. Just don't talk about it as if it's reality, as if that's how it actually is.
The way you're aging. So,
yeah, you cannot observe on a molecular level how you're aging because you cannot observe it in general.
No, it's not just dictated by genetics, and it's not inevitable. And there are things that you can do to dramatically age better.
Where do you think is the most important place for us to start this conversation, based on everything you know? And maybe some of the, presumably there's some like foundational stuff, right?
I do. I think the important place to start would be, we were talking about aging as a disease, and I think being sedentary is a disease. And I think that...
But every human in nature lives a sedentary life. All of the centenarians, the people who live to their hundreds, live a sedentary life. Sedentary by definition means, I think, if you lay around, sit around, don't really do anything for 6 or 8 hours a day. The definition differs anyway. Meaning that the rest of the day you would be doing something. Men would be hunting, women would be taking care of the children, and so on.
It's a good place to start. What I mean by being sedentary is not physically active, someone who doesn't engage in any type of physical activity.
And what is the
That's actually not the definition of the word, but whatever.
spectrum there of, someone who doesn't move at all for, 24 hours a day?
Oh, it says being sedentary can contribute to serious health risks, including obesity. That, for example, makes zero sense because obesity is only caused by food. Only, literally, 100%. You don't eat food, you don't gain weight. You can exercise, have a lot of stress, and then lose extra weight, which you would only be gaining by eating food anyway. So it's all food. Exercise has nothing to do with it. It's just a way to stress yourself and age yourself even more and to burn up the energy that you have, which is stupid. Then just don't eat it in the first place, then you won't be gaining the weight.
Versus, you've got obviously someone that's...
And by the way, the rest is obviously complete nonsense. Heart disease because of a sedentary lifestyle, which every human in nature lives, and the first recorded heart attack was 100 years ago in a US hospital. Why did nobody else have heart disease before then? It's just such nonsense. And diabetes, all food. This is all food.
Constantly running marathons and doing crazy stuff. But where are most of us on that scale? And are we moving enough?
Most of us are not moving on that enough. And most of us are, if you're talking about globally, we're on that sedentary scale where we're just not physically active. We sit at our computer.
Most people nowadays go to a gym, they run, they do something. They believe that they need to be exercising all the time.
Or a desk or a cubicle, all day.
Most people don't have a job at a desk or in a cubicle at the computer. They would probably wish that they did. Most people work very physically exhausting jobs. I don't know what this delusional talk is even about. Does she not have contact to regular people who work normal jobs? Most people have way too much stress today.
And we're not actually moving around a lot. And I say sedentaryism is a disease because it's actually been shown to increase the risk of early mortality even more than diseases that we...
What she's talking about is just a correlation. People try to link a so-called sedentary lifestyle, which they define strangely anyway, with whatever kind of disease. It's correlation studies, epidemiology. This is not science. You cannot actually prove that it causes it. You can just try to create a hypothesis, but it can't even really be called that because it's not based on anything.
Of, like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or even terrible habits like smoking. So being sedentary actually could predict early mortality even more than those diseases. But let's take a step back. It's even bigger than that. There's this amazing study. It's called the Dallas Bed Rest Study. And the study started back in the 1960s. And this is done by probably the world's most talented cardiovascular exercise physiologist. And so Ben Saltine, Jared Mitchell were involved in this early study in the 1960s. And what they did was they took 5 men, they were college students, and they put them on bed rest. And this is like 3 weeks of legitimate bed rest. We're talking, they couldn't get up to go to the bathroom, so they had catheter in them. They did not move for 3 weeks. The researchers wanted to find out what happens to your cardiovascular system if you are not moving around for 3 weeks. And now if you think about it, there's a lot of people that are undergoing surgery or they have some sort of bad illness, influenza or something that keeps them bedridden for, it's not unusual to be 3 weeks, to be honest. So it's not completely irrelevant. And what was found is after that 3 weeks, their cardiovascular system was just tanked. And one of the major, they were probably some of the most well-studied men at the time. And one of the biggest factors that was measured was their cardiorespiratory fitness. This is often called VO2 max. And essentially it's the maximum amount of oxygen that you can breathe in and your lungs then breathe that oxygen to your muscles. And it's measured during maximal exercise. You're putting in a maximal effort. And that's called your cardiorespiratory fitness. And we can talk a little bit more about that. But their cardiorespiratory fitness tanked. And now, I mentioned this was...
I'll listen to what else she has to say, but how is that a surprise if you're laying in bed all day long? Your body adapts to whatever it experiences in its everyday life. If you're laying in bed all day, then you're obviously not going to be adapted to any kind of stress exercise. We'll see if this makes any sense, but I doubt it.
In the 1960s, about 30 years later, and this is where Ben Levine came into the study. He's at the UT Southwestern in Dallas. He's also one of the most famous, cardiovascular exercise physiologists out there right now. They found these 5 men from 30 years earlier, and they measured their cardiorespiratory fitness and a variety of other parameters that they had measured at the time. And what they found was that 3 weeks of bed rest was worse on their cardiorespiratory fitness than 30 years of aging. So essentially, their cardiorespiratory fitness was no worse 30 years later than it was after their 3 weeks of bed rest.
But what is this supposed to prove? What is she trying to say? Just because you're not adapted to stress exercise doesn't mean that you are unhealthy, or what is she trying to say? Wait, oh my God. It's just not making any sense at all.
Which is kind of amazing, because you would think that the 30 years of aging would be worse on your cardiorespiratory fitness than the 3 weeks of bed rest.
And it's the same individuals.
The same individuals, the same 5 men. Now, after the 3 weeks of bed rest, back in the 1960s, they were able to get their cardiorespiratory fitness back up again once they started exercising and moving around, and it took a while. But when you look at their baseline levels, their baseline cardiorespiratory fitness, and you compare it to their cardiorespiratory fitness baseline 30 years later, it wasn't worse than what happened when they compared it to the 3 weeks of bed rest. And you might go, well, why is that so significant, the cardiorespiratory fitness dropping? We know that cardiorespiratory fitness is one of the best predictors of longevity. So there are...
How do we know it? We don't know it anyway. You're talking about a religious belief.
Studies that have shown that people with a high cardiorespiratory fitness live 5 years longer than people with a low.
5 years? Firstly, that's nothing. And secondly, it's a correlation that you're trying to draw, meaning that it has nothing to do with running or any kind of exercise or the VO2 max in itself, seeing as you cannot prove it. You cannot prove causation like this. Rhonda's logic is absolutely insane, because what she's saying here essentially is that a human being naturally, let's say, is here, and then if you don't do anything for 3 weeks, you're here as far as how adapted you are to stress, because you're not doing anything. That's normal. And her logic is that you should be here. You should stress and exercise all the time, create wrinkles, and try to adapt your body to stress and breathe heavily. And this will then do what exactly? Increase your lifespan? The ones who laid in the bed, if you just lay around all the time, they would live to over 200 years probably, because they have no stress. Whereas the ones who exercise all the time would die in their 50s, 60s, depending on how much they do. If you run marathons, typically you're going to die in your 40s, 50s. How is not adapting your body to stress, not increasing the VO2 max, an indicator of how long you're going to live and how healthy you're going to be? There's no logic in anything she says.
Cardiorespiratory fitness. That's, pretty big difference. They're basically 80% less likely to die of many different causes of death, so cardiovascular disease, cancer, respiratory disease, things like that, than people with a low cardiorespiratory fitness. So you're really getting, a 5-year increased life expectancy. You're sort of pushing and delaying those age-related diseases like cardiovascular disease, like cancer, for example. You're pushing them down later in life.
Okay, and then why do people who exercise a lot get heart attacks and have all kinds of cardiovascular problems? Why do the people who live sedentary live such long lives? That she couldn't possibly answer.
So you're not dying from them sooner. And we do know that really just getting anywhere out of that low cardiorespiratory fitness. So people with the low cardiorespiratory fitness are people that are sedentary. And if you just move anywhere above that, even if you're going low, from low bad to like low normal, you're gaining about 2 years increase in life expectancy.
The reason she says 2 years, 5 years is because in these correlation studies, that's the maximum that they could get out. You understand? Meaning that if you absolutely stress yourself like crazy and everything else that these people do is ignored, such as their diet, which would be the most important part, of course, then you still only get 2 or 5 years longer, which you don't, of course, but as far as the correlation studies go, which cannot prove causation, that's what they found out, so to speak. That's what a joke all of this is.
And that's not really that hard to do. But if you think about cardiorespiratory fitness, like...
Think about it. Most people nowadays die in their 70s. In some countries, I think it's as low as their 60s, the lifespan, the average one. Would doing something healthy only increase your lifespan by 2 or 5 years? No, it would increase it by decades, of course. You should be living to over 100, meaning that you should be imitating people who live such long lives if you want to live a long life, which you do if you're a happy human being.
So moving back then to the simple things that we can do to improve our cognitive performance as we age, the things that are simpler than doing the vigorous HIIT training.
There's actually quite a few, and first and foremost, the one I love the most is a simple multivitamin. And the reason I love this is because, I don't know, it was about 10 years ago.
Multivitamins are made out of synthetic toxic ingredients, such as vitamin D3, which it isn't, but as I explained, that's rat poison. There's all kinds of poisons in the multivitamin. It's completely fake. Once you understand how supplements are created, what the source of these vitamins is, then you will understand how toxic they are. And especially once you understand how they are even made, the procedure behind making the multivitamins or any kind of fake vitamins. It's all completely toxic. They have an LD50 value, all of them, because of how poisonous they are. Meaning that if you take too many of them, you will die. And that's how bad they are.
What are your superfoods? There must be foods of yours. Olive oil has become one of my superfoods. Just a food that I love to just put on as many.
Olive oil is poisonous. It's made out of toxic fruits, and oftentimes even the seeds are processed.
Many things as I can, because everybody tells me about these polyphenols, which are apparently amazing for you. But what are some of your sort of favorite superfoods that you try and consume that most people might not think of? So we talked about leafy greens. I guess that's one of them.
It is. Leafy greens, they have, they're high in magnesium, and, magnesium's at the center of a chlorophyll molecule.
Think about it. We have an anti-aging expert here who recommends humans to eat green leaves, as in actual green leaves from the bushes and trees. That's healthy for you. Yeah, because that's what humans eat in nature. You see it everywhere. All the tribes, they go around the bushes, pick up green leaves, and then eat them. Yeah, it's normal.
Chlorophyll give plants their green color. Magnesium is very important for preventing damage.
Yeah, and magnesium is in every animal food. How do lions survive without green leaves?
DNA and cancer, and half the U.S. population doesn't get enough of it. They're high in a lot of different compounds. I mean, they're folate, vitamin K, wont. So you're getting a lot of these micronutrients that are important.
Yeah, but that's not the folate which is found in animals. For folate, you would need to be eating liver, for example. That would be great.
I do like dark leafy greens. I particularly like kale, broccoli, because of something called sulfur.
Yeah, but you don't like it. Why do you also lie that you like it? You hate it. Everybody hates broccoli, green leaves, kale. It tastes extremely poisonous. Nobody sits there and just eats raw broccoli. Maybe if you're very brainwashed, you have tried it, but otherwise nobody does that. You always cook it, put tons of cheese over it. Man, she's just straight up lying.
Orphan, which is
Sulforaphane is an extremely dangerous poison which can kill you. That's why broccoli smells so badly. When you cut broccoli, that's when sulforaphane is released. It's supposed to kill the insects which try to eat it. It's a poison, literally. What's up with this woman?
Sulforaphane itself is not in them, but a precursor. When you break the plant or you chew it, it makes sulforaphane. So there's an enzyme that gets activated that converts a precursor in these plants called glucoraphanin into sulforaphane. Sulforaphane also increases glutathione in the brain. It helps detox.
Yeah, exactly. Glutathione is an antioxidant. It's the way your body protects itself against poisons, whatever may enter your body, which is not supposed to be there. And that means that, oh, interesting. Does sulforaphane actually bypass the blood-brain barrier? Can it do that? I don't know. I guess then if she says that, if that has been proven, that means that it's so poisonous that it's poisoning your brain. And she says, oh, that's a good thing. There's glutathione in your brain, which is literally a defense mechanism of your body. But that's good if you consume this super bitter poison from green flowers. Broccoli is a flower, by the way. How can anybody take her seriously? I don't get it.
Detoxify pollutants like benzene, bisphenol A, BPA as well. So I do like dark leafy greens of the...
Yeah, as such, if it wouldn't be dealing with the toxic sulforaphane in the moment. Oh my God.
cruciferous family of vegetables. Again, that would be kale.
Yeah, but you hate all of them because we all hate the taste of this unnatural so-called food. None of this exists in nature. It's all cultivated. You can't walk around anywhere in a forest and see any of this.
So I like the polyphenols. It increases blood flow to the brain. I also like salmon. And I think that would be something that...
It increases blood flow to the brain, but that again is just an indicator of toxicity. And besides that, flowers, green leaves, and even little berries are not actually food. You cannot sustain a life with that. Yeah, maybe some herbivorous life, I suppose, some kind of insects also maybe, but not a human being. It doesn't give you any sustenance.
The superfood would be the salmon because it is a fatty source of fish that is high in...
Okay, that's good, but salmon is not that fatty. Wild, actual salmon. Somewhat, here and there, specific parts of the body, but farmed salmon is fatty in a really toxic way. If you don't tell people what kind of salmon they should be buying, then they will go to a store and buy farmed salmon, which is what you will find almost everywhere.
Omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, which are found in marine sources, not plant sources of omega-3.
I found it really interesting when I was looking at omega-3 that it has an impact on mental health and depression and things like that.
Yeah, it does.
Well, duh. It's animal fat. It's what you should be eating. Again, ideally just eat a brain if you want healthy fat omega-3s for your brain.
It resolves inflammation. It's sort of an anti-inflammatory. And inflammation plays a role in depression, a big role. In fact, we know that...
Inflammation is just a symptom. Inflammation in itself doesn't play a role as such. It's what you're consuming which is causing the inflammation. Inflammation is good for you.
People that are injected with inflammatory molecules, like something that's made in our gut from...
You cannot inject molecules because you cannot see molecules in the first place. This woman is so ignorant. It's absolutely insane.
The bacteria in our gut called lipopolysaccharide. If you inject them with that, or a placebo control, which is saline, it causes depression. But if you give them an omega-3 fatty acid supplement, EPA, it blunts the depressive symptoms. So in other words, if you're causing the inflammation by injecting something that causes inflammation in people, it causes depression. But if you give those same people something that blunts that inflammation, omega-3 fatty acids, it doesn't cause the depression, which is kind of amazing. And there's a ton of other evidence out there.
Damn, this woman is so ignorant. I don't know if she's spreading mis or disinformation. Is she sometimes lying on purpose? It doesn't seem like it. It seems like she's really ignorant she has been manipulated. She believes that living counterintuitively, and really essentially she ignores her intuition, is the way to go. She just reads studies nonstop. But then again, it seems like she has these beliefs which she really wants to follow. Meaning that there is for sure a bias also involved. It's not just her simply basing everything on the studies that she reads. Maybe it's also her not wanting to say that she was wrong in the past, because she's been promoting broccoli for ages now. I remember her from many years ago, and she was talking about sulforaphane back in the day already. Maybe she has seen the proof that it's extremely toxic, and that glutathione, for example, is only released in response to the toxicity of sulforaphane, seeing as you're eating an extremely toxic green flower, which is what broccoli is. The same goes for all the green leaves, which are very poisonous, full of neurotoxins. Some of them have caffeine, theobromine, which is also found in the seeds that people nowadays make into a powder and drink in the morning. Coffee. I think that she actually also promotes coffee, I'm pretty sure. Maybe it would be hard to admit that she was wrong about all of that, but whatever the case, clearly she's extremely ignorant when it comes to scientific actual methods of proving what's healthy for you, because what she was talking about is epidemiology. It's all about finding a link, some kind of correlation between what you want to believe and these diseases, seeing as you cannot actually prove that that's what causes it. And that's why you find some kind of studies, if you can even call it that, which then say that you will live longer only for 2 to 5 years if you're gonna do this and that, or eat this and that, exercise and eat green leaves and flowers. And that's all that really her videos are based on. Whereas if you actually want to live a long life and be healthy, what you should base everything on is your intuition. And then it's super simple. Something feels bad, you don't do it. Exercise always feels bad. You always suffer. Then you don't do it, seeing as it means more wrinkles, aging of the whole body, the skin, because it's visible. That's how you can see if somebody is old. And all that it means is chronic stress, essentially, for most people. And that's always bad. So you don't do that. You eat broccoli, green leaves, kale. It tastes horrible. You spit it out. You don't do that. It doesn't matter what anybody tells you. You just don't do it because it goes against your intuition. You want to lay around, just do nothing, maybe sunbathe. That's good because it feels good. What feels better, going for a run or not going for a run? Not going for a run. So you don't do that. You increase your lifespan. You don't experience stress. You want to eat meat instead of man-made vegetables, which are poisonous? Then you eat the meat. Ideally raw meat, which is what humans eat in nature. And so on. This is how you live intuitively. If she was all about increasing your longevity and health, then this is what she would be promoting. This woman is not an expert. She's living in her own fantasy world. It's her being delusional. That's what she's displaying in her videos. This is not somebody you should be taking seriously when it comes to any topics, especially when it comes to aging and your health. Thanks for watching.